Hi class, welcome to week 3. So this week we're going to be talking about how do you find your research and support. So for your first few speeches, you're really just introducing yourself, right? You don't really need a lot of research for that. But for the final 3, definitely, especially the informative speech and the persuasive speech. So that's what I'm going to be talking about this week. How do you find credible information for your speeches? So the first part is definitely the internet. What does the internet have to offer you? Well, it really does have, quite a bit. The first thing I always go to first is the search engines. General search engines like Google, Bing, they're a great start if you just don't know where to begin. And you can also even go to meta search engines, Dogpile, Excite. They're specialized. They're specialized search engines. While you can also do what's called the invisible web. Google Scholar, I use Google Scholar for almost all of my research. It is credible, journal articles, a lot of really good peer-reviewed information that you can find through sites like Google Scholar. And that goes into the next topic of, evaluating your sources. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. The first thing you want to think about is accuracy. This could be done by checking the citations and investigating the author. Also, responsibility. Look at the page header and at the site address for clues, and think about sites that end with .org versus .com versus .net versus .gov. Are they impartial? You can look at this by looking at the mission statement or considering the topic or the target audience. And then finally, currency is very important. Not always. There's some topics that it might be okay to use research from the 80s, 90s, even earlier. But for the most part, you want your information to be current. So let's first talk about commercial websites. These are created and maintained by for-profit businesses and organizations. Use them to locate information about a company. You can gather supporting material from sites of respected news organizations, find current or pop culture materials, or you can even find presentation aids for your PowerPoints. Before I go into nonprofits, think of the advantages of .coms. The advantages is there are a lot of information. However, you do need to look at them for credibility. The same goes for .orgs, for nonprofit organizations. So you can use local, national, and international nonprofit groups that are dedicated to particular issues and causes to locate detailed information about a particular issue or organization. Later in the class, I'm going to have you watch an informative speech about the causes and effects of the homeless. You'll notice that one of his primary sources he uses is the National Coalition for the Homeless. I'm hoping that he made sure that they were even though they had a target audience, that they were still a non-partial organization. He also used that site very well to create emotional appeals. He had narratives of people that were homeless and what they went through. So the advantages of nonprofit organizations, they can provide background or information on a particular issue, like the homeless. They're usually considered reliable, but they may be biased. So you want to look at the author credentials. Sometimes those are hard to locate. Paid advertisements may also signal bias. So just be careful of them. Blogs they contain regular postings by a particular author. Sometimes they're in the form of a personal journal, and they may allow visitors to comment. So you can use blogs to find information of public opinion. You can learn about new developments about your topic. Blogs are very, very timely. You can also gauge if a topic is controversial or of interest. So, like I just said, one of the main advantages of blogs, they're current. They can also offer unique material, but the disadvantages, they are usually biased. You may have to verify this information elsewhere. Blogs also, they're not under any obligation to credit their sources, so you may want to definitely double check the sources to make sure that they are using credible ones. Personal websites, They're often focused on topics of personal interest. So if you're doing an informative speech or even a persuasive speech on something of personal interest, personal websites might work for you. There are advantages and disadvantages to them. On one hand, they can definitely humanize your topic, bring out the pathos, the emotions in your topic. You can also collect personal information about the site's author and use them as a testimonial. However, don't forget that these can be written by anyone. You may require to verify this information elsewhere, and just like blogs, they are often biased and they may not credit all of their sources. So, how can you use the internet to access libraries? You do not have to go to a physical library, but you can. What does the university library have to offer you? Well, your library has a lot. You don't even have to leave the comfort of your home. Most library portals allow access to search the library's catalogs, databases. You can find a lot of databases through our library, ebooks, articles. You can get APA or MLA help, locate online search and writing help. You can even contact our librarian. However, don't let online access prevent you from going to the actual library or a library in your neighborhood. Please, if a lot of students think they just have to do all of the research from their home, no, don't be afraid to hit the library, or every local area usually has a library as well. So what does library have to offer you? Well, college libraries have a lot of academic research, whereas the public library, which I mentioned earlier, has more historical and statewide statistical information. I would say special libraries are usually connected to a famous person, company, organization, government agency. For example, there's a Bill Clinton Presidential Museum located in Arkansas. There's libraries like that. It may be in your area if you're looking at doing an informative speech of a person. So the catalog is designed to help you locate physical materials, usually organized by subject. Items are cataloged by subjects assigned by the Library of Congress. And on a side note, the Library of Congress, loc.gov, another great website for research. The catalog also has librarians that can help you narrow your search terms. You should be using databases for your research. Databases are extensive collections of published works, like magazines, journals, newspapers. They're all in electronic form. Multiple subject databases contain sources across disciplines and periodicals. You've probably used these with your research in other classes. LexisNexis, JSTOR, one of my favorites, Project Muse, ProQuest. All of them are multi-subject, whereas you also have specialized databases that contain sources related to specific disciplines or topics. For example, ERIC, Ovid, Bloom's Literacy Reference Online. All of these are specialized. So if you have a topic in one of those, definitely use them. Books are also great. Nonfiction, fiction, edited collections, anthologies. These are wonderful sources for your research. Use them when you want to find important details and contextual information. If you're doing an informative speech on a person, find out if there's a biography written about them. And a great advantage of books, there's a bibliography at the end, so they can lead you to additional sources. I've done that, where in my research, I've used a book. I got 5 other sources out of it because I saw who they were citing. Now, a major disadvantage to note, books are not always current, so please make sure you do check the copyright date. Newspapers are wonderful. The paper copy or the electronic version. They are great to find current facts and statistics and or extended examples. You will need statistics for your persuasive speech, so newspapers are a wonderful resource for that. Their advantages, they are current. They're printed daily, if not every other day. They're reliable. They feature condensed information for quick retrieval. Probably a major disadvantage is the information contained may be outdated quickly. What's new today may not be new tomorrow. Magazines. Magazines are similar to newspapers. They're current and reliable, and they have condensed information. However, a major disadvantage of magazines, they might not give background information. So using magazines are great depending on what your topic is. You just might have to supplement it with more information. Newsletters. These are regularly distributed mini publications produced by groups or organizations. Use them to find information on specific groups or topics. A major advantage of newsletters, they often contain information that is not found elsewhere. Unfortunately, though, they may be incomplete or biased. So again, you want to check it with other sources. Journals are academic and professional publications. These are, I would say, 99.9% credible. They are typically peer-reviewed, whereby experts in the field evaluate the articles before publication. Use them to find detailed information or expert opinion. Journal citations work well for a highly educated audience, like a college audience, and they are also highly credible. The only thing I would say is because they do have a formal style, however, they might be a little difficult to understand. So you definitely want to keep that in mind. All right, so I'm going to go through these quickly. Things you can find in both the internet and government, or in libraries, government resources. Use them to locate statistics, facts, policy information. There's a ton out there. They're credible, they're current. They may be difficult to locate, however, but you can do pretty good searches in databases for government resources. Reference works are also great. They give brief definitions, segments. They're a good place to start your research. They're good places to help construct your outline. So you want to think about that as well. Wikipedia, good place to start. Do not cite it. And they also may be too brief. So you're going to have to use these with other sources. And like I said, with Wikipedia, lacks credibility. Go to the bottom, see who they cite, and use it to build your citations. So finally, the last thing I'll talk about, how do you research effectively? Prepare your research. Create your list. Consider where to locate your materials. And create a list of experts if you're doing interviews. Be an ethical researcher. Please avoid plagiarism at all costs and get the whole story. Double check your information. And you can go back with these PowerPoints. I'm not going to read the following checklists, but you can go through them and take a look at them. Obviously, take thorough notes. You want to establish a note-taking system so you know where your information is from. Write as you read things down. Use a separate piece of paper for all of your different categories. And record the citation before the information. And also, you want to consider how are you going to do your oral citations. Write them early. So, things to gather. You want your MLA or APA style manual. Okay, so this last part, I'm not going to read through things. I'm going to talk to you about testimonials and examples. You can pause this at any time to look at the checklist. Testimonials add credibility. You can borrow credibility from these people. You could have expert testimony or layperson testimony. The homeless example I gave earlier, he used both. He used expert testimonials from doctors and psychiatrists and also layman testimonials from people who are actually homeless. Examples they add color, they add personality to your stories. So you can start an introduction with an example. You can strengthen your points through examples. They build emotions. They give a personal touch to your speech. Personal narratives are extended examples. So again, pause this if you want to look at the checklist for examples. All right, so last minute things to think about. I'm going to say this probably in almost all of my lesson PowerPoints. You want to talk about something that you are interested in. If you have something interesting, current, and reliable, you will be confident and proud to give your speech. Please talk about things you're passionate about. Use primary sources and secondary sources. Here's some examples of them. Pause the PowerPoint if you would like to read them in more detail. Here's some more information that you can use to pause. Scholarly sources. Here's some popular sources you can use. Other types of sources that are in special demand. You want to stay current with your information. Use sufficient support throughout. You want to have, and we'll talk about this later, but you want to have a lot of different materials. And then pause this, practice ethics. Give your proper oral citations. That is the number one way to avoid plagiarism. So here are some ways that you can use oral citations. So take a look at this and then let me know if there are any questions as you begin your speeches. Thank you.